Thanks everyone for joining. I think we can probably kick off. Hi everyone and welcome. We're really excited to welcome you to the first in the series of our Blindspots webinars. These webinars will shine the light on the areas of the digital ecosystem that can often be unseen or even difficult to understand. Our job today, and where we know we can bring you real value, will be to uncover and simplify these blind spots. Today, we will be exploring how consumers are interacting with the financial services in the era of generative AI tools. To kick us off, we're really keen to understand how you feel, how your brand is going to adapt to the changes that AI will bring. So what I want you to do is grab your phone. You can either scan the QR code or you can head to slido.com and enter in the participant code that you see on the screen. We'll look at your results shortly. So while we do that, let us introduce ourselves. Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Woodley and I'm the head of clients at Ipsos Iris. And my role is really to spend time with our clients every day to unpick their business challenges and help provide actionable outcomes. I'd also like to welcome my co-presenters, Toby and Tim. Hi guys, can you introduce yourself please?
Thanks, Amanda. I'm Toby Crisp. I'm a cross-media director within the audience measurement team, focusing on data and reporting that's new to the business, such as our ever-expanding AI capabilities. Thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hi, I'm Tim Francis. I head up the financial services practice at Ipsos in the UK. We work right across the sector, so banking, insurance, payments, investments, and certainly fascinated to see how the role of AI and AI tools is going to impact and influence our sector generally.
Great. So I think we've got some results coming in. Thank you so much. Okay, we've got a bit of a mixed bag here, but ultimately, everyone feels relatively sort of in the middle. So look, hopefully we can sort of build on those perceptions. People have got the really sad face. Hopefully we can help you feel a bit more confident today. We will be resharing this survey again towards the end, but hopefully over the next sort of 20 to 30 minutes, we can build on those perceptions. And just to keep in mind, we will have a Q&A towards the end of the session. So please keep your questions to mind and you can put them in the chat towards the end of the session. All right. Now, let's kick us off. Our plan today will be to cover 3 key areas. So what the landscape of generative AI tools looks like today, what this means for customer acquisition in the financial services sector, and finally, to equip you to know what the future looks like and to get you to ensure that your brand is ready. So, Toby, can you kick us off, please?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amanda. Now, we've got plenty of data to crunch our way through today, but I thought I'd start with a couple of photos I took last weekend. The images in the bottom right here are of a display in my local supermarket. Nestled among the classic magazines I'm sure many of us would be familiar with, such as Gardener's World, we have a magazine called Improve Your Life with ChatGPT. Now, if that doesn't demonstrate how mainstream generative AI has become, I'm not sure what else could. That being said, we do also have some data to build upon the anecdotes. Ipsos polled over 23,000 people across 30 countries, and over a half of all people polled said that they were excited about products and services that use AI, while nearly 80% of respondents said it's likely that they'll use AI as a form of search tool in the future. Looking at specifically in the UK, we can see that nearly 20 million people are now using at least one generative AI tool in the course of a month. That's a 40% reach of the total online population. And these are people actively using an AI tool such as ChatGPT, Gemini, or Copilot, not people who accidentally use an AI tool without realizing, such as when you go on a price comparison website nowadays, which are often powered by AI. The category is growing very quickly, up over 100% year on year. And the most popular tool within the category is ChatGPT, with OpenAI, who are ChatGPT's parent company, reaching almost 3 in every 4 AI users. Speaking of ChatGPT, looking at the growth over the last 2 years shows a remarkable story. We're certainly not seeing a plateauing of audience. In fact, adoption may well be accelerating again, It will be fascinating to see what the next 12 to 36 months shows us in terms of usage. Some forecasters are estimating that ChatGPT could be the site that reaches the most people globally within the next 3 years. When we look at generational use of ChatGPT, it's clear that early adopters of the tool have been young people in the 15 to 24 age group. Over half of 15 to 24-year-olds are using the Gen AI mainstay ChatGPT. Now that does decrease as you go into the older generations, but I think the early adoption from the 15 to 24s is a good indication of direction of travel. If we look regionally at ChatGPT's reach, London dominates the picture. 39%, or just about 4 in 10, of all internet users living in London now use ChatGPT each month. In every other region, that number does not yet exceed 30%, which does bring us to a bit of a question as to whether this could be a London and young person fueled fad. Well, no. It's quite clearly not a London fad. When we combine 15 to 24s and the region they're from, we can see that while London is top in terms of reach at 66%, the East Midlands also has a reach of 2/3 of 15 to 24-year-olds, and all other regions highlighted here are well over 50% reach. Those in dark blue are currently below 50%. But while in and of itself, combining the age and region data isn't the be-all and end-all, it is fairly unequivocal. ChatGPT's reach is large, and it is still growing. Putting all of the information together paints a clear picture for us on the direction of travel. We're still fairly near the bottom of the S-curve in terms of a growth chart. At 40% reach of the total internet population, we're here. In this rapidly developing ecosystem, the two main questions to ask yourself are, where are you as a business in terms of building towards the future? And where should you be? I'm going to hand over to Tim now, who will talk you through how AI is shaking up the financial services sector and reimagining how we would look at consumer journeys.
Thanks, Toby. So I thought then we'd drill down and have a little look at some of the themes that are starting to emerge within our sector. Clearly, from what Toby is saying, there's a growth trajectory there, and one would assume that financial services is not going to be any different. So before we get into some of the data, I just wanted to sort of take us back a little bit and look at what actually is happening in social, what's out there, and how are people talking about ChatGPT. These are just a few examples really from what you might call a kind of finance influencer type space. So, you know, in a kind of unregulated environment. And you can see there's quite a range of things coming through there. So people, you know, recommending and saying to their users, their followers, that they should be using ChatGPT to help with debt, perhaps using it to help with kind of savings, kind of fix your finances. How might you go about kind of building funds and so on? I thought this was interesting. So hold on, what about in the advisory space where you could kind of pull some kind of calculations together, use ChatGPT and then take that to your advisor? And then finally, of course, a bit more tangible, thinking about and recommending use for example, within kind of credit cards and so on. So some quite kind of tangible but tactical examples of people already looking for and recommending the role of ChatGPT within our sector. And then looking specifically then at what we have within Iris, we can look at the data underneath Iris and have a look at, well, to what extent is AI already reshaping the digital footprint of the sector. We have lots of information, of course, as you'd expect. We've just pulled out a few here just to give you a flavour of what's going on. So this is amongst users of AI, so the group that Toby was already talking about. And you can see there, for example, on the left there, they are more likely to be heavy users of cryptocurrency. So people within the AI tool space are more likely to be cryptocurrency users. After they've clicked through, and this is the beauty of Iris, after they've clicked through from AI, you can see there that they're going off into kind of a broad kind of investment space. And then finally, I thought was particularly interesting, AI users are also heavy users of banking apps. So there's definitely a kind of a financial involvement piece in there. Of course, there's an interplay with the younger users at the moment, but clearly that's going to develop over time.
Thanks, Tim. So look, it's really never been more important that you're confident you know what your consumers are doing online and how the engagement and the discovery of your brands is changing. So central to Iris is a UCOM endorsed representative panel of real people from the UK. So we monitor everything they do across their digital devices, which allows us to not only look at top line reach and engagement statistics, but to deep dive into their actual behavior. So this is click by click. It's a wealth of passive data collection. So with the introduction of generative AI tools, the digital ecosystem is rapidly evolving. So its important measurement is always on and uncovers real online behaviours. So look, let me hand back to Tim, who's going to delve further into some consumer journeys from this rich data set across the financial services space.
Right, okay, so we're going to get into some detail now. Don't worry too much about this chart. This is just trying to make the point that for many years, and including on Iris, we've been looking at digital journeys in a kind of traditional standard sort of way. So very much around, people have a need, they go out there and search, they compare, they contrast, and ultimately, hopefully, make an acquisition or a product application. And here we just got some illustrations here for mortgages and credit cards, and you can see there very much a kind of traditional use of provider sites, Google for search, price comparison, and some of the kind of advisory pieces. But then the question is, well, what do these journeys start to look like now that we have AI tools, the likes of ChatGPT, then in the ecosystem? So I'm going to show you a few examples now of some product journeys just to sort of see how that plays out. So the first one here, these are real, by the way, these are real panelists, so real respondents on the Iris panel. So basically, we're able to look at their digital behaviour and see what a journey might look like. And this is kind of based upon kind of a real individual we've identified. This is then within the mortgage space, or it starts off in the mortgage space. And you can see it at the top there. People are looking for this individual, sorry, is looking for a particular kind of property. They're looking for, okay, how much should I borrow? They're going into money saving experts and thinking about Martin Lewis and using Google and all the aspects that you might expect on a mortgage and house buying journey. And this is where it gets interesting. Then we can see the role of ChatGPT in this journey. So first of all, you can see that people are then using Google to find ChatGPT, which I thought was quite interesting. Pop out into ChatGPT. There's a blind spot there for us. We don't really know what's going on in there, but they're in ChatGPT for a minute or so. They pop back out and they're still looking Rightmove for properties. Then we have a gap. And this particular individual, maybe making a cup of tea or something, then comes back into the journey and we can see where they go next. Suddenly we're off into an influencer, inverted commas. Damien talks money, and there's quite a lot of activity there in terms of viewing some of the content. And if you've been there, there's lots of content in terms of different sectors and so on. So that respondent then jumps out to one of Damien Talks Money other site, which is Financial Interest, and is starting suddenly to look at index funds, and we're into a kind of an investment space here. Back into Google to search for ChatGPT again, and then this person then is in ChatGPT for another 3 minutes, and he's sort of, we don't know, we'll come on to that, having a look around, and then suddenly we're into much more of a deeper kind of discussion here or investigation and search and discovery around investing, index funds, and sense checking against Bank of England as well. So you can see that already AI, we can see that can change direction. The second I want to show you is then another mortgage journey, but it's starting to bring to light a sense of ChatGPT acting perhaps more in a kind of an advisory role, perhaps than what we saw in terms of a change of direction role. This person, again, real data, looks like they're a Skipton customer. And it looks like they are looking to remortgage, and they're obviously looking within the environment of the existing customer, what they might already see. They go into Google, top right there, looking for a deal. often Martin Lewis, checking on various things. Again, using all the way through using traditional kind of Google and search and comparison websites, thinking about affordability, comparisons, mortgages, and so on. Going again, looking at comparison sites, back into Money Saving Expert, Money Fast Compare. We know people use lots of sites, and then ChatGPT pops up. So we have a traditional journey, and then somebody's then thinking, well, hold on, I could use ChatGPT to start validating, comparing, contrasting, getting new bits of information, and then finally, obviously, carrying on in a more low mortgage rates area. So that's real. Those are real journeys. What are people actually seeing? I'm sure lots of you are familiar with this. This is obviously a traditional kind of search lens. This is somebody here looking for best mortgage rates. Again, a real human. And you can see the traditional kind of visibility. We have the sponsored sites. We've got HTML links. We've got the providers and so on. We then move on into a kind of Google, the kind of what I would call a hybrid kind of thing, the AI overview. Already you're starting to see much more kind of long form content and text coming through there, a change in how it looks. Suddenly, if you notice, less likely to have the kind of provider sites popping up onto the screen. And then finally, if we go into what I would call full fat AI, here you can see a totally different landscape in terms of visibility of brands. So now we're into a much more kind of curated summary of what's going on in terms of rates, filling out the whole range there, coming through from ChatGPT, and then obviously some kind of links and so on the right. So a different media buying environment and different considerations when you're thinking about the visibility and the impact of the brand. And then my final example, really, I'm into credit cards now. And then this is quite a long-winded credit card journey that's been taken again by a real person. You can see there at the top, looking for what card should I get? Goes to Capital One, back into Google, searching traditional kind of search terms, getting some comparisons there, and then ChatGPT comes in, and somebody's thought, oh, okay, I'll see what ChatGPT tells me. And if you see there, 22 minutes of time is spent with ChatGPT. There's a lot going on in there that we don't necessarily have visibility on in a traditional kind of media kind of planning and a brand narrative perspective. This is an uncontrolled environment for ourselves. This person then pops out, and it's clear to us now they must be a Lloyd's customer because they've gone into the Lloyd's site. They're having a look for what they might get in terms of credit cards from their existing provider. Back out into kind of traditional search. They're clearly somewhere, maybe in ChatGPT, have picked up on rewards and points as an appealing proposition for cards. They're off into Barclaycard, looking at Avios, back into Lloyds to check, and then they finally, it looks like they finally decided that probably the kind of Barclaycard, Amazon co-branded product is the right one for them. So then we're thinking, well, what on earth is going on in the 22 minutes? Because clearly that is a potential blind spot, and it's an area that the brand, the provider, none of those providers we just talked about are in place. This is another example. So this is not the 22 minutes person from the credit card, but this is another real Iris panelist who's been looking at kind of remortgaging for a certain provider. And you can see there they're putting in a kind of question into ChatGPT. But the interesting thing here, if you notice how conversational that is, so really there's kind of tone and conversational coming through, as well as we put it in stars. We haven't given you the full pages of content that this returned, but a lot of information coming through, more questions, and then someone's in loan to value, again, more information coming through, hit lots of kind of curated kind of content, and even asking for more advice. And then finally, this mortgage person is then thinking about, okay, well, what do I do in terms of to get some of the best offers for Premier status? So you can see here lots of detail that we don't see. So Toby's now going to talk to us about, well, what do these blind spots look like?
Thanks, Tim. Now, from those real-life examples that we've seen in the prior slides, it's clear that there are just parts of the journey that are not in your control as a brand anymore. This is where the concept of blind spots really comes in, the golden thread of our webinar, which is bearing fruit for us today. Here are a few blind spots that I spotted as Tim was walking us through those journeys. We're seeing that people aren't just comparing like for like anymore. For example, a journey that might start as a price comparison for a mortgage could end up as an alternate investment journey. Your website may now not be the destination people arrive at in order to find out information about your brand or your offering. It may just be used to validate information that's already been discovered and perhaps acted upon elsewhere. And finally, control of recommendations might be out of reach for you. Unless your site is optimized and discoverable by AI, then you might not even be considered. Now, earlier, we asked you to rank how ready you feel for AI, and we wanted to share this question with you again and see if your feelings of readiness have changed at all. Now, as before, you can either scan the QR code or type in the participant code on the screen when you visit slido.com. And just to let you know, this is a new survey, so please make sure that you scan the new code and don't use the old one again. Now, we'll give you a minute or two to get your phones out, and while you're voting, Tim and Amanda are going to share some closing thoughts and we'll reflect on the results shortly.
Thanks, Toby. So as mentioned, we're moving on to our final section. So what does it actually all mean for the financial services industry tomorrow? So we believe that discovery will continue to evolve, as will the platforms that consumers discover on. So consumer language will change, they will prompt, and they will search. These discoveries will become even more tailored, they become more nuanced, and definitely indeed personalized. Tim?
Yeah, so I mean, clearly there's loads of implications here for our sector in terms of paid, earned, and owned coming through in terms of the plan. I mean, I'm particularly interested and thinking about the implications for the website, so the owned asset. As you saw before, when you're thinking about the journey and the tools, the visibility, the discoverability of our websites is different, and potentially is a blind spot here. So we get into some interesting conversations here around how do we use our owned assets in terms of disrupting, influencing, being part of the new ecosystem, the new journeys. But as Amanda says, discovery is still going to continue to evolve. So this is very much a snapshot of where we're at now.
Look, and also we're seeing and envisioning a world where the color, the feeling, and maybe even the sentiment towards your brand and logo may be reduced to plain text. Generative AI tools will become a new line on your marketing and campaign plans. Until then, make sure you know how you're being seen. What do you think of that, Tim?
Well, I mean, the thing is, brand is hugely important in consideration sets, in choice, in ultimately somebody selecting or acquiring a products and services for any of the sales in the sector. The challenge here is that those kind of we're getting into uncontrolled narratives. Potentially the tone's different in my environment. So in terms of the opportunity, the potential for consideration, those dynamics are changing, and we need to think about what's the interplay now between how we think about brand, the meaning and the aspects of the brand that we're deploying in this new kind of world. But clearly it's not going to be the same. So the question is, how do we work with the changes in terms of how people are discovering to maximize the opportunity for our brand to encourage choice?
Thanks, Tim. And look, we're going to move on to our final thought for the future. So we're thinking that relationships with your customers will be intercepted and challenged. Brands will have to ensure each customer touch point delivers on those brilliant basics. What are your final thoughts?
Well, I mean, yeah, because we've talked a lot about acquisition, but don't forget about customer retention. And we saw on one of those examples where customers are also cross-referencing with ChatGPT to compare and contrast to validate. So this isn't just an acquisition story, this is also a customer story. So when we're thinking about upsell and cross-sell, how does this play out? And we have very deep understanding of how to build strong customer relationships. We know a lot about what does good user experience look like, both for websites and apps. But the question then is, what do those facets look like in a new world of the tools? And I suppose the question is, and I think the assertion is, should we revisit our assumptions about what good looks like in terms of building strong customer relationships?
Thanks, Tim. We're just going to have a quick look at the results from the second survey. And I think you can see that actually there might have been a shift potentially away from readiness and back towards being a little bit okay in the middle there. But then also there are people who are not prepared in their minds for the future of AI. So, there definitely are things that you as businesses can do in order to help that preparedness. And Amanda's just going to walk you through a couple of top tips from the Ipsos team.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. So yeah, look, you may be asking yourself, what do I do now? So these are the three things that we would recommend. So start now. Look, it's not too late, but the landscape, as you can see, is changing at an incredible pace. Make sure you're up to speed on AI tools and what your customer perceptions and use of them are. Challenge what you know. Do you actually truly know and understand your customers and your competitors? Audit yourself. There are new AI measurement metrics available. Ensure you have the right insights and tools like Iris available that uncovers your blind spots. And look, also be ready to pivot. The winners in this space are the ones embracing AI tools. They are testing, they're iterating, then they're pivoting as they learn. The ones that don't, unfortunately, will be left behind. So over to you. As mentioned, we've got a Q&A section and we're keen to understand what are your blind spots. We're happy to take questions, so please put them in the chat. We do have a mystery voice, Oliver, who will read out some questions for us. Oliver, we got any questions?
We do. First question here is, how do I optimize my website for AI tools?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think I had a question from in conversations with clients about, do I even need my own website? Is it just being built for AI? I don't think that's true. As Tim has mentioned, it's important as a validator and as the source of truth. But we're definitely seeing brands hosting and putting content on other sites where ChatGPT and other likes of Gen AI tools are reading. So we do know that ChatGPT usually comes from Wikipedia, or they come from Reddit, actually. So it's important to really know what your full ecosystem looks like and where your brand and sentiment and discussions of your customers are happening, and making sure, as I said before, that kind of audit so you know that it's actually accurate.
Another question here. Does Ipsos Iris cover off sectors other than financial services?
Yes, it absolutely does. The beautiful thing about the Iris panel is that they are fully consented, opted-in panelists who allow us to track absolutely everything that they're doing when they're on the internet. And that's from the world of finance to the world of sport or entertainment to the world of retail. So we can see which site they go on, irrespective of which category or sphere you're interested in looking at. So yes, that certainly is something that we can look at, and we do have a full program of webinars coming up in the coming months that will look at different topics. And so yeah, finance is not all that we are able to look at.
Thanks. And there's a couple more questions coming in. Please do keep adding them into the Q&A. This question here on the deep dive into ChatGPT conversation was interesting. How does that work through Ipsos Iris? How do we get that data?
Yeah, so we have a pretty, as Toby mentioned, a pretty engaged bunch of panelists who, I say bunch, 10,000 of them, so a lot of them, and we do regularly speak to them and ask them, their feelings on different topics and subjects, and we are able to ask them to share with us their ChatGPT history. So essentially, they download everything and they send it to us, and for us, we're able to dive in. And the example that Tim has shown, as he mentioned, is a real conversation from one of our panelists. So we're getting that rich history, and we're actively looking into it as we speak and understanding what the conversations do in what categories they cover, the context, the clarity, I guess the complexity of the questions that they're asking. And we're really uncovering how people are creating relationships with their chosen generative AI tool.
Fantastic. And then a final question here in the Q&A. Do we have any information on what numbers of people are paying for premium services within providers, presumably within AI platforms and solutions?
Yes, I'm sure we do. Not to hand, but it is certainly something that we would be able to provide. We would see people who are logging into the premium services. We'd be able to identify their usage through the URLs that they're landing on. So that certainly is something that we'd be able to follow up with. So if you would like to send that question as a follow-up to either myself, Amanda, or Tim, our emails are going to appear in the final slide of the session today, then that would be lovely, and we'd be happy to set up some time to talk you through that.
Great. Thank you so much for your engagement today. So look, Ipsos Iris is here to inform, and we're here to empower you so we can transform your data-driven strategies together. So really, thank you so much for joining us. This is the first in a series of webinars, and we're really pleased that you spent the time. Thank you so much, and please feel free to reach out to myself, to Toby, or to Tim if you have any questions, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.